The top stories tonight in Y News. The Philippine government's running debt stock ballooned further and reached a new record high as of end February this year.
Metro Manila and 48 other areas will remain under the most lenient alert level 1 until April 15.
The Commission on Elections disclosed the new format for the new presidential debates on Sunday.
A giant Airbus A380 just completed a 3-hour flight powered by cooking oil.
Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Thursday, March 31, 2022. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I am Herlene Delgado.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news. The debt of the national government reaches 12.09 trillion pesos as of end of February 2022, according to the Bureau of Treasury. This is a new all-time high outstanding loans. Rosalie Cons explains why.
The total outstanding loans of the Philippine government reached 12.09 trillion pesos as of end of February 2022, according to the Bureau of Treasury. This is 0.5% or 63.83 billion pesos higher than the national government outstanding debt in January 2022. The increase is due to the currency fluctuations and net financing from local and external sources. Domestic debt accounted for 8.41 trillion pesos or 69.6%, while external sources is 3.68 trillion pesos or 30.4% of the total debt. The 0.5% increase in external debt is due to the impact of peso depreciation against the US dollars and the net availment of external obligations. Meanwhile, according to Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation Chief Economist Michael Ricafort, the new record high outstanding debt of the government is due to increased government borrowings to finance the wider budget deficit for the month of February, as well as reduced tax revenue collections and increased government expenditures on various COVID programs and infrastructure projects. Ricafort also said the government debt could still increase for the month of March 2022 to finance budget deficit as well as infrastructure spending before the March 25, 2022 ban on public works. However, the further reopening of the economy and easing of restrictions will help boost the government recurring tax revenue collections and reduce government's expenditure for financial assistance and other COVID programs. Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, COVID-19 alert level 1 will remain over the national capital region and many other areas in the country, including provinces, cities, and municipalities until mid of April 2022. Under alert level 1, all establishments or activities are allowed to operate. On-site work will be allowed and seating capacity will also be at full capacity, provided it is consistent with the minimum public health standards. Meanwhile, some areas shall be placed under alert level 2, wherein 50% capacity will be implemented indoors for fully vaccinated adults and minors, while 70% capacity will be allowed in certain establishments and activities.
The World Health Organization lays out 3 possible scenarios on how the pandemic could evolve this 2022. The worst-case scenario, the emergence of a more virulent and highly transmissible COVID-19 variant. Isko Miguel has this story.
The World Health Organization released an updated strategic preparedness, readiness, and response plan for COVID-19. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said this is the 3rd strategic plan for COVID-19, and it could and should be the last. It includes 3 possible scenarios on how the pandemic could evolve this year. Dr. Ghebreyesus said, the most likely scenario is that the virus continues to evolve, but the severity of the disease reduces over time as immunity increases due to vaccination and infection. In the best-case scenario, we may see less severe variants emerge and boosters or new formulations of vaccines will no longer be necessary. However, the worst-case scenario, he said,
a more virulent and highly transmissible variant emerges. Against this new threat, people's protection against severe disease and death, either from prior vaccination or infection, will wane rapidly.
The WHO said addressing this situation would require significantly altering the current vaccines and making sure they get to the people who are most vulnerable to severe disease. There's also a way to move forward and end the acute phase of the pandemic this 2022. It will require countries to invest in 5 core components.
First, surveillance, laboratories, and public health intelligence. Second, vaccination, public health and social measures, and engaged communities. Third, clinical care for COVID-19 and resilient health systems. Fourth, research and development and equitable access to tools and supplies. And fifth, coordination as the response transitions from an emergency mode to long-term respiratory disease management.
The WHO emphasized we have all the tools we need to bring this pandemic under control. We can prevent transmission with masks, distancing, hand hygiene, and ventilation. Also, lives can be saved by ensuring everyone has access to tests, treatments, and vaccines. Equitable vaccination remains the single most powerful tool we have to save lives, according to the WHO. Isko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Justice assures it will prioritize cases and complaints against buying and selling of votes amid the election period. The department says it already directed related agencies to immediately assist individuals who want to file complaints against vote buying. Irene Cerudo will tell us why.
The Justice Department vows to provide preferential attention to cases and complaints on vote buying for a clean and fair election. The department is among the agencies partnered with the Commission on Election or COMELEC in its interagency task force Contra Bigay, which is authorized to investigate candidates, officials, and voters involved in vote buying.
Bibigyan yan ng priority attention ng Department of Justice. Meaning to say na preferential attention will be given. Anyway, yan naman ay for a limited period only, no? Hanggang sa matapos lang ang eleksyon. Babantayan lang naman ang vote buying.
According to Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara, he already directed the National Prosecution Service and Public Attorney's Office to immediately probe on the complaints they received pertaining to buying and selling of votes. Also working with the DOJ and COMELEC is the National Bureau of Investigation. Secretary Guevara said they have not yet received any formal complaints on vote buying. He also encouraged the public to report to authorities anyone or any incidents relating to vote buying.
Makakaasa naman ng mga tao na right away ay aaksyonan yan ng mga members ng interagency task force, particularly the DOJ agencies. No? Ang mahalaga ay yung pagkilos ng mga tao na nakakakita na mayroong ganitong mga violations. Ang mahalaga ay mag-file ng complaint. Yung complaint na yon maaaring mabilis ang proseso, maaaring matagalan, pero ang mahalaga ay nag-file ka ng complaint.
The DOJ explains concerned citizens may also file their complaints anonymously for their own safety and security. They can submit videos, prints, or any collected evidence to any DOJ field offices. The department remains optimistic that with the new task force, the public will not hesitate to file their vote-buying complaints. Meanwhile, the DOJ says the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency and other government agencies are prepared to submit their data on illegal drugs to the International Criminal Court. According to Guevara, the data submission can aid for the ICC to gain understanding on the country's difficult battle against illegal drugs.
Handang-handa ang mga agencies na ito na isubmit yung data tungkol sa mga confiscated drugs, and so forth and so on, na nakuhuli nila over the years, no, para maipakita kung gaano kalawak ang problema natin sa illegal drugs.
Eileen Cerudo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Philippine National Police sees no problem even if some individuals or government employees are granted an automatic gun ban exemption. But PNP spokesperson, Police Colonel Jean Fajardo says individuals who will be granted the exemption still need to present a permit to carry firearms outside of residence and checkpoints. Leia Ilagan will tell us why.
The Philippine National Police is ready to follow the new guidelines of the Commission on Elections on the implemented election gun ban. PNP spokesperson Police Colonel Jean Fajardo says they see no problem in the COMELEC's new guidelines.
We respect, ma'am, the discretion of the COMELEC in this case. Ang PNP naman po, ma'am, ay being one of the deputized agencies ng COMELEC, ma'am, i-respeto po natin yung kanilang discretion on this aspect.
Fajardo adds individuals who will be included in the gun ban exemption still needs to present a permit to carry firearms outside of residence if a checkpoint officer asked for it.
While they were given automatic exemption by the COMELEC pursuant to the nature of their work nga po, ma'am, ay dapat po may kaukulang pa rin pong papeles yung kanilang mga baril. Unang-una, sila po ay autorisado to own and possess firearms at syempre, yung kanilang baril po ay dapat po rehistrado po yun, hindi po expired.
Among those mentioned by the COMELEC as automatically exempted from gun ban are the members of the judiciary such as judges and prosecutors.
So sabi ko, kailangan i-relax natin yan. In the first place, yung mga justices, judges, mga prosecutors, they are very responsible officials. Na-screen nga yan ng Judicial and Bar Council. So we cannot question their character. Dapat, kung pwede, bigyan natin ng automatic na exemption ang mga yan sa gun ban. And then of course, our field personnel, yung mga election officers natin, they will be very vulnerable kung wala silang firearms to defend themselves.
The implementation of the COMELEC gun ban began on January 9, 2022, the start of election period, which will last until June 8, 2022. Leia Ilagan, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And for those watching our live streaming on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook. The National Water Resources Board says there is currently sufficient water supply in April, but water concessionaires in Metro Manila prepare for possible water shortage during the dry season. Asher Kadapan Jr. explains why. Yes, Asher, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, Will. The water level in Angat Dam is currently at 190.95 meters. This is below its normal high water level of 212 meters and just about 10 meter close from the minimum operating level of 180 meters. The National Water Resources Board projects that it may decrease to 180 meters towards the end of the month of May if there will be no precipitation. Should this happen, the NWRB may be forced to reduce the water allocations initially to irrigations and hydropower plants, then to concessionaires in Metro Manila.
Isa yan sa mga nire-review natin kung kailangan na mag-adjust or kung kinakailangan magkaroon ng adjustment, no, pagka umabot po yan ng 180. But sabi nga ho natin, even bago siya umabot, pwede naman po nating gawin yan. Kung ang sinasabi naman ng rainfall forecast walang masyadong mga pag-ulan na darating.
The NWRB has already started conducting cloud seeding operations to help induce rain in its watershed. But the concessionaires in Metro Manila, on their part, lay measures against the possible water supply shortage. Even while the water supply is still sufficient, Manila Water says they have made available additional and augmentation water supply sources to address expected increase. These include operations of deep wells and water treatment plants, drawing water from Laguna Lake, Marikina River, among others. While Maynilad Water Services also prepares the same measures They also conduct off-peak interruptions in some areas.
Off-peak interruption meaning sa pagitan ng alas 10 ng gabi hanggang alas 4 ng madaling araw, ito yung mga oras na konti lang ang nagkukonsumo ng tubig at tulog naman ang karamihan ng customers. Pinapatay po natin yung tubig para mapunuan po yung ating mga reservoir.
Although the NWRB assures that the water supply in Metro Manila is still sufficient until April, the agency calls for water reservation on the consumer's end. Will?
Yes, thank you, Asher Kadapan Jr., reporting live from Quezon City.
The prices of regular milled local rice in several public markets in Metro Manila increased to 4 pesos more per kilogram due to the continuous increasing of oil prices. Janice and Henta reports.
Rice farmers are forced to raise the price of their locally produced rice amid the oil price hikes. Based on the latest price monitoring of the Department of Agriculture, several public markets in the National Capital Region has increased the price of regular milled local rice to 4 pesos more per kilogram. In the Commonwealth Market in Quezon City, the price per kilo of regular milled rice was increased by 2 pesos per kilo, increasing the total cost from 36 pesos to 38 pesos per kilo. Well-milled rice, which was 38 pesos before, is now 40 pesos per kilo, while well-milled imported rice are now 43 pesos per kilo, which is higher from its previous price of 40 pesos only.
Di pa gano'ng gumagalaw. Tapos tong huli na lang tong linggo nito, tsaka lang gumalaw siya. Dahil sa inaangkatan namin, tumaas na rin Matumal ho. Sa hirap ng panahon ngayon. Malulugi po kasi po sa gasolina lang po talo
Medyo tumaas yung deliver sa amin Kaya hindi naman pwedeng hindi kami magtaas mataas na ang delivery. Kaya tinaasa na rin namin ng 2 piso. Ganun pa rin naman kasi matumal ngayon, konti lang yung mamimili. Kasi halos wala rin naman perang tao Ang hinahanap nila ngayon yung mababang presyo Kaya mas mabilis sa amin ang mababa kaso mahal na.
Even in the Agora market in San Juan, the previous 38 pesos per kilo of well-milled local rice is now 39 pesos per kilo. In the Pretil market in Manila, the price of local rice has increased 4 pesos or it has increased to 43 pesos per kilo from 39 pesos per kilo. In the Muntinlupa City market, the former 42 pesos per kilo of well-milled rice is now 43 pesos.
Binili ko po ngayon is kalating kaban po. Umaabot naman po siya ng 1 buwan. Medyo tumaas po kasi ngayon.
Tulad ngayon sa araw-araw, hindi lang bigas ang bibili natin, di ba? May mga ulam. Marami tayong expenses sa araw-araw, kaya ang hirap talaga mag-budget.
According to the Department of Agriculture, the increase in rice prices is due to the oil price hike, which affects the production and transportation of rice from farm to market. However, according to DA Secretary William Dar, there are already available assistance for rice farmers that is scheduled to be distributed this April.
I think everybody knows that there is increasing petroleum prices and also the impacts of the Ukraine war. So everyone is affected. So lahat po na makakaya po natin, kagaya inahanda po na natin dito sa next cropping season, sa rice particular, sa wet season, ay mamimigay po tayo ng punla, mamimigay po tayo ng fertilizer.
Janice and Hente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Presidential candidate Senator Panfilo Lacson has rejected a call for him to withdraw from the presidential race to pave way for the tandem of Senator Manny Pacquiao and Tito Soto III. JP Nunez reports what?
Presidential candidate Senator Panfilo Lacson slammed party list Representative Joselito Lito Atienza for being rude in asking him to back out for the presidential race. Earlier, Deputy Speaker Lito Atienza said that he is very serious on considering to withdraw from the vice presidential race. Atienza clarifies it is not because of his recent knee procedure but to give presidential candidate Manny Pacquiao a winning edge against Bongbong Marcos Jr. and Mayor Sara Duterte. He also suggested vice presidential candidate Tito Soto III to replace him as running mate of Pacquiao if he cannot return for the campaign. However, he clarified that he will only withdraw his race if presidential candidate Senator Panfilo Lacson will also back out.
Who is it to tell me to withdraw? Wala siyang personality. I'm not backing out. Ilang beses ko na sinabi yan. That's kabastusan to say the least, ano? For somebody like him, na mas matanda pa sa akin, na magsasabing mag-back out ang isang kandidato without even consulting, that's insulting, okay?
Meanwhile, in a message, his running mate, Senator Soto, said that they are both eyeing for the May 9 election, but endorsement of other candidates will be most welcomed. On the other hand, Senator Pacquiao earlier said that there was a scheduled meeting between him and Soto last Monday, but it was postponed due to conflict of schedule. JP Nunez, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. remains optimistic that his call for national unity is attainable. Nel Maribohok will tell us why.
Presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. called anew for national unity during his campaign in Lanao del Sur. Marcos Jr. said it will help the country's recovery more quickly from the COVID-19 pandemic. He also believed that his call for unity is attainable. Marcos said Filipinos have always pulled through no matter what crises or disasters because they were united.
Dahil po sa hinahanap natin crisis, alam naman po natin na ang nangyari po sa COVID ay lahat ng Pilipino ay maghirap. Sila man ay mayaman, sila'y mahirap, sila'y sikat, sila'y hindi kilala, ay lahat po ng Pilipino na kailangan ng Pilipino.
If he wins the elections, Marcos vows to resolve the problems in electricity bill and job generation. His running mate Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte meanwhile visited the provinces of Bataan and Rizal today. She met the supporters of the UNITEAM together with some local government officials. Nel Maribohok, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, one of the faction of Partido Federal ng Pilipinas, chaired by Abubakar Mangelen, endorses the presidential candidacy of Mayor Isko Moreno Domagoso. Mangelen explains that the National Executive Committee of PFP chose the Manila City Mayor as he fits the party's core values and against corruption, illegal drugs, criminality, and poverty. The other PFP faction, on the other hand, is led by Senator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Meanwhile, Partido Acción Democrático conducted its campaign activities in the province of Oriental Mindoro today. In his interview, Domagoso dares the camp of Bongbong Marcos to pay at least for the family's estate tax dues amounting to 23 billion pesos. This after a general council of PFP Marcos faction defended that the amount was the one ruled with finality by the Supreme Court against the 203 billion tax claim in recent reports.
Bayaran mo na yung 23 billion. Attorney. Final na pala eh. Asa na? Kaya gamitin namin pambayad sa pangayuda natin sa mga farmers. Bili tayo ng fertilizer, 2,600 per bag. Iayuda natin sa mga driver ng jeep, bus, taxi, grab, tricycle. Kasi hirap na hirap sila, lumilit ang kita nila.
As the Robredo Pangilinan tandem caps off its Lanao del Norte campaign, presidential candidate and Vice President Leni Robredo reiterates the need to declare an education crisis should she win the presidency. Meanwhile, her running mate, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, explains the reason behind his absence in one of the campaign rallies this week. This report will tell us why. Presidential candidate and Vice President Leni Robredo sees the need to declare an education crisis in the country to address the problems in the education sector, including the access to and quality of education. Speaking in an academic symposium in Mindanao State University, Maigo School of Arts and Trades, the Vice President vowed to implement reforms such as doubling the education budget and incentivizing teachers.
All the international assessments have been showing us year after year na yung quality ng education natin has really declined over the years. Kailangan may gawin na tayo for our graduates to be competitive. Ang first step talaga, gawan ng programa yung mga teachers na ang aasikasuhin lang nila pagpapahusay ng sarili sa ka-instruction. All the admin work should be done by non-teaching staff.
Robredo also had a dialogue with small Banisilon farmers who were among the beneficiaries of the Angat Buhay program of the Office of the Vice President. The Leni Kiko team was also welcomed by supporters in campaign rallies held in Maigo and Causwagan, Lanao del Norte. In the 2016 vice presidential race, Robredo won in the province with over 68,000 votes. Meanwhile, Robredo's running mate, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, reveals why he was not able to attend the Borongan People's Rally in Eastern Samar last Tuesday. According to the senator, he agreed not to attend the event to ensure that local leaders will come out and fully support Robredo. This was after he was informed that the local officials would only endorse Robredo's candidacy. Despite Robredo being paired by some groups and politicians with other vice presidential bets, Pangilinan remains optimistic, citing the power of the electorate.
Our voters will decide. In the end, ang magpapasahin ang botante. The people are coming out in tens of thousands. Nararamdaman ng politiko yun, kaya nga ini-endorse na si VP. Pagka mas lalo nilang maramdaman, dadating din ang panahon, baka ako na rin ang i-endorse nila. So, tingnan natin. Marami pong mangyayari.
The Robredo ticket will be touring the province of Bohol tomorrow. Harleen Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, is adopting changes to its presidential debate format through dividing the candidates into groups and by allocating more time for them to tackle debate topics. Dante Amento explains why.
Expect more class of wits and innovations in the format of the COMELEC-led debates this coming Sunday, April 3 at Sofitel, Manila. COMELEC spokesperson Director James Jimenez says there will be adjustments based on their observations during the first round of the presidential and vice presidential debates last March 19 and 20 respectively.
Meron tayong mga konting modifications sa ating presidential debate format, no? Nakita naman natin kung ano yung nangyari nung nakaraang debate, and we figured that this would be a good opportunity to even sharpen the debate some more.
In the previous presidential debate, one general question per segment was asked for all the candidates. But for the upcoming debate, there will be only one general question at the start of the event.
For the upcoming debate, itong April 3, there will be one general question that will be posed for all the candidates to answer, and this will happen at the start of the debate.
For its succeeding segment, the candidates will be divided into 3 groups, and each group will be given a question to debate on. From the previous 90 seconds allotted for each candidate to respond to a question, they will be given 120 seconds or 2 minutes with 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Okay, ulitin ko lang. For this new format, 120 seconds ang ibibigay natin or 2 minutes para makasagot ng mas malalim at mas masustansya yung ating mga kandidato.
After the debate proper, 60 seconds will be given for each candidate for their closing statement. The issues during the debate will focus on government accountability and domestic policy. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky announced in his nightly video address to the nation that the country's defense against the Russian invasion is at a turning point. He also said that Ukraine does not believe in any beautiful verbal construction because the real situation is happening on the battlefield. Marvidal Finn will provide us the details live. Yes, Marvy, go ahead. Marielle, Russian forces bombarded areas around Kiev and the northern city of Chernihiv just hours after Russia pledged to scale back its operations in those areas. President Zelensky renewed his long-standing request in his one-hour talk with U.S. President Joe Biden, as Zelensky asked for more help to resist the invasion.
Якщо ми реально виборюємо свободу та захист для демократії разом, то ми маємо право вимагати допомогу у цей переломний непростий момент. Танки, літаки, артилерійські системи. Свобода має бути озброєною не гірше, ніж тиранія.
Zelensky also said Ukraine is preparing for new strikes in Donbass as they see an accumulation of Russian troops in the area. Top Russian military officials have said in recent days that Moscow's main goal now is the liberation of Donbass. Furthermore, the president also called on anyone who pretends to teach Ukrainian army how to fight and said that the best way to do it is to go to the battlefield directly.
То найкращий шлях – це зробити – відправитись на поле бою безпосередньо. Не з крісла вдома чи в тому місці, куди виїхали за безпекою, а з реальних бойових зіткнень. Якщо до цього не готові, не варто і починати повчати наших захисників та наших захисниць.
Meanwhile, talks between Ukraine and Russia are set to resume Friday. But as the shelling and intensive attacks continue after Russia made a pledge to scale back, there is little hope that a resolution would emerge soon. Marielle? Thank you, Marva Delfin, reporting live. South Korea has successfully launched its first solid propellant rocket, calling it a major step toward acquiring space surveillance capability. Mavian Dog will provide us more details live. Yes, Maeve, go ahead.
Marielle, the South Korean-built rocket soared into the sky before releasing a dummy satellite into space in an attempt to expand the country's weapons arsenal. Amid rising tensions with rival North Korea, the launch came 6 days after North Korea carried out its largest intercontinental missile test last week. According to South Korea Defense Ministry, solid-fuel rockets reduce launch times, have simpler structures, and are cheaper to manufacture than liquid-fueled rockets. Currently, South Korea has no military reconnaissance satellites of its own and depends on the U.S. to monitor strategic facilities in North Korea. The ministry further said in a statement that the successful test launch of the space launch vehicle marks a key milestone in their efforts to build a space-based surveillance system and bolster defense capability. Moreover, Marielle, South Korea will soon launch a spy satellite into orbit aboard a solid-fuel rocket. Marielle?
Thank you, Mavian Dog, for that live report. The Biden administration recently launched its one-stop-shop website with the latest COVID-19 information, vaccines, tests, treatments, and masks. This is part of the administration's efforts to help Americans gain access to information on how to live and adapt with some levels of the coronavirus as they seek the return to normalcy. President Joe Biden was also seen taking his second booster of Pfizer vaccine. This came 1 day after the FDA authorized a second booster of the Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna vaccines for adults 50 years and older. Later the same day, the CDC recommended all adults aged 50 and older to receive an additional vaccine dose. Traditional kerosene fuels used in aviation now see a potential substitute as test flights by Airbus are conducted with planes powered by sustainable aviation fuels. Paul Gatalian will give us the details live. Yes, Paul, good evening.
Marielle, for the first time, aerospace company Airbus fueled its A380 airline with 100% sustainable aviation fuels. The trial was reported to be successful, completing a 3-hour test flight on March 25, and was followed up with a second flight to monitor SAF used during its takeoff and landing on March 29. Sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, is comprised of cooking oils and fatty waste known as hydroprocessed ester and fatty acids, or HEFA. Mariel, this fuel possesses carbon neutrality as the organic ingredient, and that is made up of absorbed carbon dioxide as they are grown. And for about a year now, since March of last year, SAF-powered flights have been consistently tested among other Airbus aircrafts like the A350 and the A319neo, which can be fueled up with 50% SAF combined with kerosene. Meanwhile, for the future prospects, by 2035, SAF is planned to be introduced into the market by Airbus as they claim increased use of SAF is a key pathway to reach the net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Mariel?
So, Paul, what other innovations can we expect to lead aviation into a carbon-free industry?
Well, Mariel, Airbus announced recently as well that they plan to test hydrogen fuel technology on their modified A380 jetliners. The test flight for the hydrogen-based aircrafts are expected to be conducted in 2026. Back to you, Mariel.
Thank you, Paul Gatchalian, reporting live. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Mariel Latoza reporting live from Perth, Australia. Good evening.
And before we close, we will leave you with a word, giving glory to God. From the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 16. It says, "Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits." And those are the reasons behind the news March 31, 2022. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am Herlene Delgado.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.